Hey, welcome back. This is Measure of an Episode, as you know, where our continuing mission is to explore whether or not a Star Trek episode is a proper Star Trek episode, and not just good or bad TV. I'm Paul.
And I'm not.
We watched Voyager, a Voyager episode. Season 7, Episode 11, Shattered.
And it was Season 7, Episode 10, not 11.
Oh, right, not 11. Right, sorry.
And again, like the last episode, I thought this episode was really good up until about the last 20 minutes. And like kind of when they went into Tom Paris's holodeck. I know I'm getting ahead of us. Fun episode, good episode. Not a Star Trek episode.
Actually, I haven't decided yet. I'm on the fence. So
Okay.
You might have to convince me either way. I feel like the idea of the whole time spheres thing, which I don't think is what they call it in the episode.
No,
think
because
they
it
ever
wasn't
say
really
time
spheres.
spheres.
Yeah, there was like 17
No, they're
different
just sections.
sections. Yep.
Okay, so it starts out in kind of in Star Trek at its worst, in my opinion, which is like we need to start out in a banal situation to kick off the episode. And not that they don't pay it off later, it's just boring. Like it could have totally started with him going through whatever, right? Like it could have started right when the action starts, when
Right.
they realize that there's turbulence on the ship, right? He could have just been carrying his ale, whatever it was called, cider.
Oh yeah.
where you-
Right,
Some
his
sort
cider
of
that he has to hide from Neelix.
Space cider. Yeah. But no, we have to start with the Borg babies.
Right.
And I guess they wanted to needed to introduce them because they're there later in the episode.
Yes.
But they didn't need to dedicate an entire banal scene.
Well, right, they could have followed, instead of starting with Naomi and Icheb, they could have started with Chakotay going into that warehouse. Like it could have followed him walking in there and found them doing the puzzle. Like it could have been the exact same scene, just from his perspective instead. He walks in, is grabbing the ale, and they're like, "Oh, we were supposed to be cleaning, but I wanted to help her with her tutoring, so please don't tell Seven."
Right. Yeah, it was just a lot of, I don't know, information we don't really need or don't care about.
Right.
Turbulence on the ship. Janeway's called to the bridge, and Janeway says, "What is it?" And Kim says, "I don't know." And then Janeway says, "Well, let's keep driving toward it anyway," which they do. They're flying towards it, and so I don't remember how, but Chakotay gets shocked. Oh, he's in engineering, and he gets shocked, and they look at him, and he's like old on one side of his face, and so I was like, "Oh, interesting. Are we gonna have like two Chakotays, like one old side and one young side, and he's going to be like arguing with each other? It's like, no, we must take a risk." And the old one's like, "No, we must be conservative." That's what old and young people
Right,
do.
I know. That also sounds like a horrible episode.
I wouldn't put it past this show.
No, me neither. So,
But that doesn't happen.
no, it doesn't.
He wakes up in sickbay, and the doctor informs him that he was chronologically out of sync in some way. His alignment was not good. And I did feel like, we learn in a few seconds, because he's like, "Hollow emitter, what's that? You can't come with me?"
Right.
And I was like, "Oh, okay." I was like, "Okay, well, this is probably the last time we'll have to deal with that kind of conversation."
Well,
where
actually,
somebody knows something.
right. Well, but oh, how wrong you were. But I actually thought with that comment, I thought it was an alternate timeline, even though I knew we were dealing with time spheres, but I didn't realize it was time travel. And so I actually thought it was an alternate timeline where they never received that technology.
That's kind of where I thought it was going to go too. And it actually, they handle it, but not, I feel like not enough, because they deal with so many alternate realities in this show that I feel like at this point in the show, which is season 7.
Yeah, last season.
Episode 10.
Yep. Almost halfway through.
That they would need to tell people, look, all this stuff happened. This is all stuff that you've seen before, right? This isn't yesterday's Enterprise or tomorrow's Enterprise, but they don't handle it that way. So I think that's where we were sort of expecting it to go. But in a way, they subverted our expectations, which doesn't happen a lot with this show.
Right? And doesn't necessarily mean a good thing.
Yeah. Well, clearly not. Okay, so the second indication. By the way, when Chakotay, or when the doctor says, what are you talking about? What's a hollow emitter? He just sort of is like, "Oh, that's weird," and then goes about his day. Wouldn't there be more questions? Like, are you malfunctioning? What's going on? And why hasn't he called the bridge? And why is there nobody else in there? And so there should be more. He should already be asking questions.
Right. I got the impression that he wanted to find out what was happening by going to the bridge and getting information. Like, because if the doctor's like, they don't tell me anything, then why am I going to ask you any questions? You're just going to get angrier about how they don't tell you anything.
True, but it's not as though he doesn't wake up to an urgent sickbay or an urgent doctor, right? It seems like, everything seems to be okay. There's nobody in there, right? Mm-hmm. Normally, when they want to do that, you wake up and there's like people. It's hysteria,
right? It's,
when they
infirmary.
Want there to be a lot of energy. Yeah, that doesn't happen,
right?
So, so then he goes and he runs into Seska in engineering.
He went to Seska. He went to engineering first. I thought he went to the bridge first. No, he went to engineering.
Oh, you're right. No, he goes to the bridge. Sorry.
Okay.
I messed that up.
Okay.
There's so much in this episode. I just can't keep I can't keep it straight.
Can't unpack it fast enough.
So he goes to the bridge and they run into Janeway and she's got the bun. And so immediately we're like,
this is weird.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and again, like when he talks to Harry and Harry's like, "Sir, do I know you?" I again thought it was an alternate timeline.
Yes. That's exactly what I thought. I was like, "Oh God, we have to have this conversation." Like, I'm dreading any conversation that comes with, "Hey, who are you?" I'm this person that you've known all along. No, you're not, but I am. And I've just summed up the whole episode, by the way, just now. I guess in their exchange with Janeway, that they kind of establish that this is before they've been thrust into the Delta Quadrant,
right?
And so then they're going to take him to the bridge. And they disappear, and they're dead, by the way.
Oh, but wait, hang on. Right. Right. Well, okay, so there's two things. So we do realize that it's time travel because he asks the doctor what the star date is. And he tells him, and he's like,
That's later. That's later.
That's not in that
doesn't
first
ask. No, that's later when he goes to see the doctor again. So he doesn't know.
Okay.
He doesn't know that he's time traveling. He may assume, because he's seen the show before, that there might be alternate realities or something like that. But he doesn't know until he goes and sees the doctor again. But I want to say that because those two security guys that were escorting him to the brig, they disappear and die.
Right. So that brings me to my other point. If when you pass through the time sphere, you disappear and essentially you die, then how did he get teleported from engineering to sickbay?
I don't know. And where's the other Chakotay in these timelines? Obviously, he wouldn't be in the one that he just came from.
Right.
But he should be in the other ones.
Well, I mean, no, because in all of the others, except for the Borg one, they explain why he's not in it. Like with the Seska one, everybody's off the ship, so he shouldn't even be there. In the future one, he's dead. In the bridge one, he obviously hasn't come to the ship yet.
Yeah, and nobody uses their communicator in this episode.
Right.
Not because they set up that it doesn't work, but because that would put a huge plot hole. Because you would think that just because in the physical ship there are time spheres, that their contemporaneous counterparts all over the ship still exist. Right? They don't cease to exist because there's these time. They're just different pockets of time. So we should still be able to communicate with his contemporaneous Janeway.
See, that's what I was thinking too. But then I was wondering if it was literally just these pockets on these pockets on the ship are those only those parts are still in that present time. Like if you did walk through, because remember when they walked through and they were able to walk through, it looked like they just disappeared.
Yes, but I'm assuming that because in the past, when they can't not exist, right? They have to exist. Like the time, it's not like when you time travel. That would be like saying if you time travel backwards or forwards into the future, that you replace you. Which doesn't follow. That doesn't make any sense.
So no. What I was thinking was each piece of the Voyager, like that, like the engineering piece of the Voyager from that time was pieced together with the bridge part from that time, with the astrometrics lab from that time. Like it was a puzzle, which is why they did the puzzle at the beginning. This is how I interpreted it. It was a puzzle of all those different timelines pieced together to make one Voyager. So it was a self-contained engineering from that timeline, and they wouldn't be able to contact the bridge because it wasn't there. They never tried, but that's how I interpreted it based on the puzzle at the beginning.
I suppose you could plausibly explain it either way. Chakotay, he goes back and visits the doctor after escaping Seska, and he has to explain to the Doctor what we've already seen, right? So why not just cut that out and just have it cut in to the end of the story so we don't have to hear it again.
Right. So one of the things that I was hoping would happen with this, and I'm kind of disappointed that it didn't happen, was that because he was traveling through, like, I don't know how many episodes there are, but this is season 7, obviously, so there's 6 seasons before this, where if there were any inconsistencies or plot holes, he was going to go to those timelines to explain or fill in that plot hole.
Oh, interesting.
Kind of
they didn't do that.
They didn't. I know. But yeah,
No.
I was really hoping that's what they were going to do. Instead, it turned out to be like a weird clip show.
Yeah, and there was no urgency to it. So eventually Janeway and Chakotay team up. The Janeway from the past teams up with the Chakotay from the future, and they have babies. The end. No. They
turn out to be lizards.
Yeah. No. Anyway, so there's this weird pacing problem with this episode, which is my least favorite part about this episode, is that there is no urgency. So they go from timeline, like, even though there isn't a sense that the ship is in immediate danger, you get the sense, hey, they need to fix this. This is a problem. But they essentially have this like mild jaunt through the ship, going from room to room as they're just walking, and in every scene it's the same scene with different dialogue where he just says something, Janeway will be skeptical about something, and he'll say, no, well, that's that in the future, this way. And she's like, I don't believe it. He's like, well, you better believe it. Yeah. And that's the end of the scene.
Well, no. And then they inject the virus, and then they move on to the next one. Right. Or the vaccine, not the virus. They inject the vaccine. Yeah.
It's like the most boring video game ever.
It's actually a very typical video game. You have to kind of do the same thing in each room and, solve the same kind of puzzle. So they get to the astrometrics lab. And again, like, one of the things I thought would have been really cool here is he talks about the temporal anomaly that strikes them. And Ichib and Naomi are like, no, that's not what happened. You used the deflector dish and it just bounced off the starship. And that was... And nothing, like there was no attack on the warp core.
Fine.
Yeah. And then Chakotay is like, oh, that's what we have to do. Well, just instead of anybody else figuring out, like, they're from the corrected timeline where none of this happened.
That's actually a great idea that you just had. Because they get into, in that scene, they get into the temporal prime directive.
Right.
Right? And by the way, for people concerned with not violating the temporal prime directive, they don't seem to care very much about violating the temporal prime directive in every single scene, right?
We'll get to why that doesn't matter also later.
Well, yes. But it would have been great as if they said, that's not what happens, but we can't tell you. Right? We can't tell you what. We can't tell you how to fix this.
Chakotay's like, what? Why not? The temporal prime directive. You taught us that.
Yeah.
Ah!
Yeah. No, that would have been awesome. Now that would have changed. That would have made me like this episode. Is if in that scene, in the stupid scene, if they replaced the stupid scene with the scene where he tells them about the importance of following orders or following the prime directive, and right, and then he has that lecture. It would have taken 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And not, hey, hide this from Neelix for me. Instead of that, have that. And then in this scene, they say, like, you taught us this.
Yeah.
We can't tell you. Right? We can't
Such
do
a good
that.
setup for such a good payoff.
Yeah. But that doesn't happen.
No, that doesn't happen.
But I will say, they did an excellent job finding actors who looked like their younger counterparts.
Yes. Fun fact, Naomi is actually the Orbit Gum Girl. She's the one.
You're kidding me.
No, she's fabulous.
She looks totally different.
I know.
Is the Orbit Gum Girl the same girl who sells... Can't tell if it's bidets... Or if it's like a spray.
Right.
It's like a spray or something. I don't remember.
Yeah,
but
no,
she talks about
it's poopery. Yeah. And I don't know. I don't believe so, but I'm not positive.
But yeah, Naomi and Imhotep look exactly like their younger, like the young kids.
And so here's where the callback comes back. He's saying, I never told Neelix where you hid the cider. But, like, it was a cute little callback. But what's funny about that is, like, it's 17 years later... And a dead person, tying back to the random generator, like a dead person from 17 years ago just walks through your door. And you're like, hey, I've been meaning to tell you.
Yeah. Well, and that, again, that's a writing thing. Like, they could have such a poignant moment.
Right.
If it meant something more, right? And actually, the guy who plays the older Imhotep, he is actually a good I actually thought he was the best actor on the day, right? Like
Yeah.
he's totally sold that moment of, hey, I did what you said. I never,
Right.
It was like a good way of saying, hey, you're missed,
Yeah.
Like, we're sorry that you're dead. I know it doesn't show
Right.
at all.
Right.
But we're super sorry. And it doesn't show at all. I know that.
But you can hear it in my
on the
voice.
inside.
You can
Yeah,
hear it.
but
You can hear it in my words. That we are sorry.
Not really,
inside.
because I'm smiling. I'm smiling really like brightly right now, even though you're dead. And I know you're going to die.
Ignore my face.
To me,
Ignore the
you
tone.
are dead.
Just
Yeah,
listen to
don't look
the.
at that.
Let me write this down so you can see how I'm actually feeling.
And then he writes there's like a bunch of hearts, like smiley faces. Never mind.
I'm really bad
Don't
at
look at
I've had a hard time showing emotions for about 17 years now.
You know how when we were watching Relics, and I said, this episode is awesome just because of its potential, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this episode is terrible just because of its potential.
Right. Yeah. But for Relics, the episode was good all by itself.
Right.
It raised a whole lot, and it could have expanded into so much more, which would have been good. But that episode was good unto itself, kind of like the Anomaly episode of Enterprise.
Yes, it's not sort of almost accidentally good just because of the writing,
right?
And the context of the thing,
right? And for this episode, like, the premise was great, and there were so many things where just a little bit of tweaking could have made it amazing, and instead it was fun sci-fi, and it's definitely Star Trek in that regard. Like the sci-fi was inherent to the plot. There's no way you could do this anywhere else. But it was just an okay episode because they made it kind of a mediocre clip show. There wasn't any reason for those specific timelines to be there other than, first off, having that contrast with Janeway, but then being like, hey, remember Seska? Hey, remember Bride of Chaotica?
Every single interaction is not a meaningful interaction.
Right.
It's either it's Chakotay having to prove that he's from the future and that it's in everybody's best interest to believe him.
Yeah.
Or the scene is predicated on the one-dimensionality of the motivation of every character.
Right.
Janeway is a skeptical captain. Seska is the evil mastermind and also hot for Chakotay.
Yes.
Right? The Doctor is a belly-aching dick. B'Elanna is a headstrong militant. Like
right.
Tuvok is Vulcan. Like every single interaction.
Well, yeah, it was kind of like look at how much these characters have grown based on who they used to be, and we didn't really need that. But how, like, just you saying all that, how amazing would it have been if the Doctor was his usual self? Like, there wasn't anything about like being a prison in these four walls or whatever. Like, he said something about how he has to stay in the office, and Chakotay knows that without like explicitly stating he can't leave. And after Chakotay leaves, Kes comes out and is like, Doctor, I have these for you. And he's like, ah, thank you, Kes. And like, that's where the scene ends.
That would have been way better. Way better.
Yeah.
Like showing the things that we don't know instead of showing the things that we already know.
Yeah.
In the past. So they go into 7 to 9 and they concoct the bioneural circuitry idea while they inject it with the time serum.
Mm-hmm.
And so the thing about these bioneural gel pack things is that they use them from time to time as a plot device, right? Or to fix something. Like, I think they get a cold at a certain point or something like that, which is interesting, right? It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But they never explain what they do. What are they there for, right? Like, why are they better than another ship, like the regular ships that use just regular circuitry?
I feel like it's explained in the first episode, if not a couple times, like repeated in the first season. But I don't remember why. I think one of the reasons is because being biological, it's able to heal itself. And I think there was something about the neural processors makes it either like able to learn or adapt or process faster. I think that's.
Yeah, I mean, it never is. It's only because they're malfunctioning, and that's why they use them. It's never to give them any kind of advantage.
Right. Yeah. The story is always because there's something wrong with it, which is cool. It's a unique storyline that hasn't happened in any of the other series.
I mean, if they learn anything from Voyager, is that they should cancel the bioneural packs or whatever. Like, they should never use them ever again, because all they do is cause problems.
Cause new problems. Yep.
Speaking of problems, they should cut out the whole holodeck scene. The whole thing.
Yes.
It doesn't make any sense. It's way too long, and it's stupid.
Yes.
Okay, so the first thing that happens is Janeway walks into it, and like she's never been in a holodeck before, right? She's like, "What is this? A monochromatic area? Where are we right now? Like what do you like? You even if they didn't have to walk from one like room to another room, which is how the holodeck works. It's not like magically you walk into a room without a door. It's like we're in the holodeck now. No, you have to go through these big sliding like giant X-Men doors, right?
Yeah.
And she's like, "Where are we? I have never seen a place like this. Please tell me." Like she would have to know what a holodeck is. It's on her ship, so she'd probably do the math. Oh, we haven't crossed into some monochromatic dimension. We're on a holodeck, right?
Right.
Even the fact that I didn't see them go into the holodeck, and then it all of a sudden was in black and white, I was like, "Oh, they're on the holodeck."
Right.
Right?
Instantly, yeah.
And I don't even live in the future.
I'm watching it through a time portal.
Exactly. And I was given less information than she was, not being the captain of a Federation ship.
Yeah.
So that has like 5 holodecks on it anyway. So there's that part. And then there's the part where I could give less of a diddly about that whole recurring 50s sci-fi holodeck thing that they keep bringing back.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I could care zero about it. I know that they love it. They think it's the greatest thing ever, and that's why they kept using it. But do you care about that whole thing?
So they brought it back 3 times.
It was your favorite part, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. They brought it back 3 times, and Robert Duncan McNeil was actually really sad that they only brought it back twice. Like, he was really hoping that they would do a lot more with Chaotica. But I feel like it was brought in like the 5th season or even the 6th season, and so they happened so close together that it wasn't dispersed enough to make it entertaining. Instead, it felt like it was repetitive, and it didn't really, each time didn't really bring anything new. It was hammy. It was the same conflict.
It was the same thing, same concept as the Moriarty thing with the holodeck in Next Gen, right? Except the Moriarty thing, there was some depth to what was happening. In this, it was just these sort of one-dimensional automatons carrying out a program that they can't escape because the holodeck controls are offline, right?
Right.
And it gets old.
I would equate it more to the gangster, Dixon Hill, that was where Picard...
Dixon Hill?
Yeah, Dick Dixon, where he actually liked to go there and, escape Lwaxana. But it was used sporadically enough, and the plots in there were different enough that it made it fun and interesting to see. Whereas Chaotica or Captain Proton was so one note, and it was so just over the top. And I think, I could be wrong, but either we're remembering wrong because they were so grating, or they happened so close together that we didn't have enough time to get away from it. And then when it came back, it was like, oh yeah, this is actually kind of a fun, tongue-in-cheek thing. It was, oh gosh, it's this again. And that's how I felt when this came on again. Like when, I haven't watched this in at least 15 years. And when it came on, I was like, oh, I remember this.
Yeah, you just don't care about it.
Right.
There was nothing fun about it. And frankly, I don't really care about the Dixon Hill stuff either. I understand. I like it probably better than the sci-fi thing in this show, but I don't know. It was designed as a departure from the normal Star Trek show, which I get.
Right.
But I just didn't care. I just wanted, why can't he be on the ship, like doing stuff? Why do you have to take same thing with that DS9 episode where they're all like, Cisco is just a writer, and this takes place.
Oh,
in the
I can't wait to
50s
get to that
something
one.
like that. Yeah. I could wait a long time.
Well, no, because it's considered one of like the best DS9 episodes, and I think it's because of its message. But I believe that it's not sci-fi. So
it's not
right. I'm thinking it might be like Life on Mars-esque sci-fi, but we'll see. Anyway, we're not there yet, and that's not the episode we're talking about.
We're not there yet. Right.
Yeah, but that's interesting that you the DS9 one. Kind of take it or leave it because it was a one shot, and Dixon Hill I enjoyed just because it was fun to see like Picard act a little bit more like a schlub rather than the prim and proper captain. But yeah, the Captain Proton Like, I think it would have been more fun if Paris had treated it more like a video game that he was playing that he wanted to get to. Like, that would have been so cool. A holodeck video game that isn't just that weird game that I think there's one like in season 1 or 2 of Enterprise or Next Generation. But if it was like a fully immersed video game that he had levels that he had to pass through and like he gained power-ups and that kind of thing, like that would have been fun to see. Like somebody who was actually like itching to be off duty so he could go back to his video game, and like occasionally Harry Kim joined him as his like player 2. Like I feel like if that was the case, then Captain Proton could have been a lot more fun if it was just played as a video game rather than some serial over the top thing.
But isn't that what the holodeck is?
What?
Isn't it more of a video game than it is a narrative movie or something like that? Like you are interacting with it more like a video game than you are with as a movie, right? Which you don't interact with at all. Like I don't think if it was more like a movie, you would just be sort of this omnipotent being that it can walk around the narrative but doesn't interact with it. Whereas in this, it's more like a video game because you are a character in the narrative. So it is kind of like it.
Yes, but I've always interpreted those video games to be more like Myst, where it's puzzle solving and you're just trying to get from one clue to another, kind of like this episode. Whereas I'm picturing Captain Proton would have been like literally like one of the action video games where he can find things that would give him, whatever, like super strength for like 30 seconds or, through the level, he has to collect X amount of, proton reactors before he can actually like put the thing together, So, I mean, and that may have been what the original intention was. Now saying those things, like I do feel like that was kind of the overall story, but it was done more as a movie story style rather than an actual video game. Here's your objective to overcome.
And I get the idea that they're juxtaposing supposedly a very serious Star Trek show next to a tongue-in-cheek throwback silly science fiction.
Right. B-movie. Right? Yeah.
So I get it. But I don't know. I just never found it interesting or funny or charming.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that was also because it was starting to get repetitive in what the scenes were. Like you had to get into that timeline, you had to explain what you were doing, or you had to sneak around and do it, and then you had to move on to the next one.
Right, but they casually saunter from one room to another. There's no, right. They don't seem to care. Like it's just there's no urgency at all. It bugged the crap out of me.
Yeah, there's no timeline on. There's no time limit. Yeah,
yeah. There's no ticking clock.
Right.
So they finally get out of the holodeck, and there's a discussion at some point. I think it's after Tuvok dies, after he does the salute. That's so cheesy, so unearned.
Well, and they tried to make it even more earned. I don't know if you heard it or not, but they actually played the Star Trek theme under his death.
Yeah. It just wasn't, we hadn't seen Tuvok the whole episode. Right. And then he dies. Yeah. And it bum, bum, bum. It's like they were playing it as though it was Spock in the second Star Trek movie.
That was exactly what they were doing.
No,
yep.
Yeah. This is not, you don't get this.
Right.
Why? First of all, you don't get this. Second of all, if you think you get this, why are you saving it for this moment when we know everything is going to be okay?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So they have this discussion about whether or not they should change the future. Should Chakotay tell Janeway how to not get thrown into the Delta Quadrant? And honestly, I understand the idea, don't mess with the timeline because you could totally mess things up so they could be worse.
Right.
Right? But could things be worse at this point? I mean, so, like, why not? I can see there being an argument of, maybe I should tell her. Don't do that thing with the caretaker. Just walk away. It's going to cause a lot of problems. And then look me up. I'm not a bad guy. We can go have dinner and not have sex.
Right, because at that point you'd be engaged and actually probably married.
Right. And so, I don't know. Do you think, not necessarily in the context of this episode, but do you think that he should have told her to do something about the future?
Okay, well, so in this particular episode, it's kind of a moot point because she says if Chakotay does his job right, we won't remember any of this. And as soon as she said that, I was like, then why doesn't Chakotay just go ahead and tell you everything?
Right.
Like there was...
And why wouldn't they remember it?
Well, yeah, I mean, if the Temporal Prime Directive is to avoid people knowing about their future so they can't change it, and you're going to forget this, then the Temporal Prime Directive is out the window. And, I mean, I guess maybe it just depends on what the temporal anomaly is as to whether or not you'd remember.
I guess, but he's still, even after that moment, he's still guarded, but
I know.
Ultimately concede. He ultimately starts, divulging all of these facts. She's like, tell me what happens in the future. He's like, sorry, I can't do that temporal prime directive. She says, please tell me about the things in the future. He's like, all right, twist my arm. Here's what happens in the future.
3 times.
Yeah. And it's like, okay. So I can see, in order to get this job done, maybe you need a little bit more information, or I couldn't help myself but to tell you. It would be really hard not to tell you, I suppose, if I were in that situation too.
Right.
And so he divulges things, and I don't even know if he does that knowing that she's going to forget it either, because he still doesn't give all of the information. He still is sort of cagey about it.
Right.
But then, to jump ahead a little bit, at the end, the last conversation he has with the actual contemporaneous Janeway after everything is fixed, she just sort of inquires casually about what had happened, and he says, you keep asking questions to answers I can't give you, temporal prime directive. Like, he's super cagey about it. So, like, what's going on? First of all, why would it be harmful to tell somebody about something that happened in the past already?
Exactly. Yep, I have that exact note. Why can't he answer? It's the past. The time is done. Yep.
It's done.
Yep.
Right? Unless she knows something that we don't. Unless that's Seska.
But to answer your question, in an instance like this, where Chakotay's back in the past and she's like, so tell me all this stuff, I almost feel like I would tell her actually what happened for 2 reasons. One, so she knows what the choice is that she made, and once she has the rest of the information, she can either feel more confident in making that choice, or at least understand why she made that choice.
Well, and also it could introduce some interesting story points where you tell her and she makes a change, but it still puts them into the Delta Quadrant, but something else is different.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Have something be different when he comes back to his own timeline, and it's unexplainable. And maybe he has to ask somebody, or like he has blonde hair now or something. Just do something.
Tattoo spread across his face.
It says F-U, Chakotay.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too, for a show, so the original idea for Voyager was very much going to be like season 3 or 4 of Enterprise, where they were cast out, they didn't have resources, or they didn't have a place to renew their resources. I think I talked about this with the Anomaly episode. And Brannon, I think, and the studios got so nervous about that like as the series started, they were like, nope, never mind. Like we're going to be able to reset, both for like syndication and just because like that's what people want to see. But once you're in like the 6th or 7th season like this, like it would have been so great if they had planted something in a previous episode that was really questioned or unexplained or something like that got answered in this episode. Something randomly pops up, and like somebody's like, oh, I can't find this, and they really need it, and then it just appears, and they're like, oh, okay, great. And like at the time, it would have been like, what? How did that even happen? And then when this episode came up, Chakotay remembered that moment and took that piece and like put it over next to them, and walked out again.
Or plant something for the end.
Right.
Plant something in this episode that's going to happen later that, they knew at this point, they knew how it was going to end. So put it in there.
Yeah. Yeah. Or reference something that happened in Shattered in Endgame. Or vice versa.
Right.
Yeah.
Or use it. Use it, and not even reference, use some element of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Or even if it was just something up on the screen. If you saw, right, because at a certain point, you see sort of the Borg cluster of something in Endgame, right?
Right.
And it's sort of a bunch of Borg cubes going. It's like a I don't know, a terminal or something, and have that be on the screen when he goes and sees Imhotep and what's her name.
Right.
And that would have been interesting. You're like, oh, what's going on there?
That would have been
very
cool.
Instead of them just having a nice casual day in astrometrics, why not have them thrust into some sort of conflict?
Yeah. One of 2 things would happen. It would either be a very cool Easter egg and foreshadowing, or it would have been a very cool scene to have in this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if it wasn't connected to Endgame,
right?
Having them be in a battle of some kind with the Borg,
right?
I don't know. Would have been interesting.
Yeah.
But they didn't do that. They were just having a ham sandwich, and that's it.
So to wrap up the episode, let's get back to Seska. and he tries diplomacy, and as they're walking in, Janeway's like, well, on page 2, it's like, you better have a plan B, and something tells me you already do.
Right.
And so
this was probably the best part of the episode,
where they brought everything together.
Honest. Yeah, where they were at least somewhat clever about everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say that when 7 of 9 saves the day, it is kind of cool.
Yes.
I was like, oh, this is cool.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
This is how you use your characters accordingly.
Right.
There is a conversation though that past Janeway has with Chakotay, where she's kind of flirty with him. She's like, so tell me.
Oh, I know.
How close do we get? And he says, his response is, there are some barriers we never cross. And I took that to mean anal. I don't know if you had another interpretation.
I did. Yep.
I don't know how you would, but I'm open to it.
Damn,
Unlike
Jake,
Janeway.
what are you planning on doing? Don't tell me. I'm excited to find out.
But the flirtiness that she has with Chakotay, for some reason, makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's because it's because she's the captain,
right?
And she shouldn't be talking to her second in command that way, or if it's an acting thing, or I'm just not. It's like I'm misconstruing what the type of vibe she's supposed to be giving out. I don't know. Do you feel this way?
I did not in that instance. I felt like she was kind of like, well, I want to kiss you, but I don't if that's inappropriate. Especially since I just left my fiance like 2 weeks ago. But yeah, so that's kind of how I took it. She was like, so are we going to kiss at the end of this scene? And he's like, no, we never do that. And she's like, okay, well, then I'll just shake your hand.
No. Yeah, it was just for Janeway spank bank. That's what I think. Because she already had a fiance.
Right. Yeah. A fiance who past Janeway has just left. Like, this is not something.
Oh, no. I thought that she was still with the fiance.
No. Like, when I say just left, I mean, like, she just boarded Voyager to go on her mission.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Got it.
Not they separated, but she was just with him like a couple days ago, and now she's hanging out with Chakotay for like what?
It's a
couple hours.
Better deal to look forward to. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So how much do I have to look forward to in this isolation? Nothing from me.
Can you touch your nose with your tongue?
Just understanding parameters. My safe word is keep going.
I don't have a safe word. And he's like, I know. It's a big problem. It's a big problem in the future.
My safe word is that doesn't count.
It's long but effective. All right, and that's the end of the episode.
Yeah.
It's just all hunky-dory at the end. There's no questions.
Yep, reset
there
back
are
to
questions
zero.
that don't get...
Season 7, there's like 12 episodes left, and it just resets back to 0. Oh, man.
Too bad.
It's, well, and just with shows being the way they are now, like, there is so much more allowed with serialization. Like, I think it's not because of the lack of syndication, but I think it's because streaming now allows all episodes to be shown in order, where even network sitcom shows are allowed to have new characters introduced like halfway through the season, or something happen to characters that changes their dynamic, like they move, or, a family member dies or something like that, where it doesn't impact the quality of the show, and it actually, I feel like, improves it, because, well, they're not worried about syndication. They're not worried about having to reset, because you have so many streaming platforms that allow you to watch the episodes in the order that they are supposed to be, whereas syndication was literally any episode, any time. And that's why so many series tried to reset to 0 as much as possible.
Yeah, and now I think it's more of a stylistic thing than anything. I mean,
which part?
I think
resetting to 0 or not?
No, just having it be very almost like it's a 12-episode movie or a 12-hour-long movie.
Right.
I don't like episodic stuff anymore. I want it to be this long serialized narrative.
I think it depends on the show. And obviously, we know what we're getting into when we're getting into these shows. Like, it's not, if this was Picard and it was resetting at the end of each episode, that would be weird. Whereas
it would be this weird throwback. That's all it would be taken as.
I would not be surprised if Lower Decks does that, just because it is a comedy and comedies have a tendency to reset. But they don't need to. Like Last Man Standing has had lots of changes in their show. What's another one? Brooklyn Nine-Nine has. But anyway,
I mean, they reset. But a lot of Brooklyn Nine-Nines, it's almost like Arrested Development, where a lot of their comedy comes from self-referencing.
Right, which doesn't happen in a syndicated way.
No.
But
definitely not.
But yeah, I mean, how you're going to edit this, I don't know. But to tie this all back, my point being that season 7, they knew they had 23 episodes. They knew that it was going to be the last season, if not the second to last season, because at that point it would have been the longest running Star Trek series. So I feel like they could have done more with taking more risks and having things bleed from one episode to the next. And it's just very disappointing having a time-altering episode reset at the end.
They didn't put a lot of effort in the writing, in the acting, right? Because they're just walking down the hallway in between, timelines.
And it was just the same scene in different settings. And consequently the dialogue was different.
Just different dialogue.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but the objective in every scene was the same, and it made it repetitive. It made it okay to watch. I mean, I would definitely suggest this episode to someone because it is a fun episode, like with the sci-fi aspect of it. But the ethical and moral dilemma was just kind of, do I tell you or not? But that ultimately became a moot point at the end since everybody's memory was erased anyway. So I would say this was an okay to a good episode of television, but it's not a proper Star Trek episode.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it could have been converted very easily into one by having there be some consequences for him telling her about the future. Right. Mm-hmm. Where they were wrong about them not remembering, something is different, or somebody's dead who comes back later or something. They don't have to be dead forever. Right. But just do something and then it would have been a good tale of morality. Yeah. Yeah. Where there's a reason we have these rules. You don't just get to, but of course, Janeway is sort of a walking morality with that. It's like, oh, you spout all these rules except when it's not convenient. Right. And then you break them.
Morality
willy-nilly.
be damned. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Actually, you saying that, it would have been very cool if just like for these last 12 episodes, they hired back Brad Dourif as the Betazoid. Do you remember him?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. That would have been cool. Like, and so that was how he altered the timeline in some way. Talking about the Maquis and like all these different things, and
or he's captain. Like the next episode, he's the actual captain, and Janeway is like a lowly ensign for some reason, right?
Right. Mutiny. All
right. Yeah. Let's see what we're watching next.
Sounds good.
I'm gonna say that better. Let's see what we're watching next.
Okay.
Let's see what we're watching. DS9.
Okay.
Season 6, Episode 5, Favor the Bold.
With morale sinking as the Federation continues to lose against the Dominion-Cardassian alliance, Cisco launches a plan to retake Deep Space Nine.
Oh, this could be interesting.
Right.
A heist, as it were.
Yeah. And kind of jumping right into the middle of an series-long arc. Yeah.
Good. At least we'll be jumping into something.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go watch it.
All right.